All right, good morning. As we record this, Sal Maiorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, Adam Benigni, WGRZ TV. This is Believe in Bills, five-time division champions. Sal, both of us worked the game well into the morning hours, a 35-10 snowbound win over the San Francisco 49ers that probably did so much to epitomize a team that has exceeded expectations all year long.
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. I mean, look, we've talked about how we're both kind of surprised by how this has gone for the Bills. Didn't expect them to be, 5 games ahead in the AFC East with still 5 games to play. It's almost incredible to think about that. But this team has come together maybe as well as any Sean McDermott team has come together in his 8 years. Yeah, they've made the playoffs 6 years in a row and 7 out of 8 now. But I don't know, this team's got a special feel to it. I guess I did feel that way in 2020 when they made that first big leap into the upper tier of the NFL. But even that felt a little bit different because that was the COVID year, and there just wasn't the excitement and buzz that this team is creating because that team, nobody could go to the games. It was just a whole weird thing. This team's got everything going for it right now. Knock on wood, they're pretty healthy at this stage because to go into a December 8th game against the Rams and be pretty close to as healthy as they could possibly be outside of Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid, who might both come back. It's just an ideal situation for the Bills to be in. And as we said, unexpected, to be quite frank.
I would agree with you. I think this is a nice product placement, by the way, with the Dunkin' Donuts. That works well.
Yeah. Wish we could get them to sponsor the show.
Right. I know. Good idea. I would agree with you. Excuse me. I would agree with you that this is the best version of a Sean McDermott team that we have seen. I think Sean McDermott's been at his best, and it trickles down. I say there's an infrastructure to this roster that hasn't existed in the past. Whenever they've been hit with injury, adversity, or whatever, they've been able to find answers. I suppose, and we can talk about this, the run defense might be the area where I would have some concern looking toward the stretch run on the postseason. If McCaffrey doesn't come out of that game last night, I don't think it changes the overall outcome. But I mean, San Francisco was able to execute its game plan while he was in there, which was to run the football without question. But in the bigger picture, I mean, the questions they've been able to answer at the safety position, for example, on defense, we have seen the pass rush be more consistent, offensive line, running game, acquiring Amari Cooper after the departure of Stephon Diggs in the offseason and finding answers in the passing game. All of those things, plus McDermott with the leadership from a coaching perspective and then trust in his coordinators, which I think has been a big thing that has trickled down throughout the roster and that they've created along with Brandon Beane. I would say overall, this is the strongest and best version of a Sean McDermott team that we have seen during his time since 2017 in Buffalo. Quick word from the sponsor before we get into it. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. Largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, NHL, college hoops, UFC, and MMA as well. Head to the website today. Bet Online. The game starts here.
So you just spent a little more than a minute talking about all the things the Bills have really, achieved and done, and you didn't even mention Josh Allen's name. So think about that for a second.
That's kind of the
things, right? All those things that you just talked about, and you didn't even mention the guy who, to me, right now is the front runner, or at least he should be, for MVP. And he just put on another virtuoso performance last night. So it all goes to your point of this team has really come together in a way that we haven't seen a Bills team come together probably since the Super Bowl years. I would argue that team, because there was no free agency and salary cap, that team stayed together for several years, and it was a well-oiled, functioning machine in those Super Bowl seasons. This team has that vibe as far as I'm concerned. There are guys, obviously, who have held over for a couple years, and there is definitely a strong core to this team, but they have built on the edges of this roster. And as you mentioned, excuse me, they can overcome injuries because the next man up, which is one of McDermott's favorite mantras, always comes into play. They got a guy ready to go because that's how they've built it. They have set a culture here. They have set a standard, and we are seeing it all come to fruition during this, 7-game winning streak now? It's been really impressive to watch.
And in 9 of the 10 wins this season, they've scored 30 or more points.
Yeah.
Stop and think
ties
about
the team
that.
record already.
Yeah.
That ties 1991, the Kelly, which would, until Josh Allen came along, that to me was the most impressive, powerful Buffalo offense we've ever seen. In fact, they held the team scoring record for all time until a few years ago when the Bills, I think the 2020 team that also scored 30 points 9 times, until that team broke it. I'm pretty sure that was the case. Now they've done it again. And there's 5 games to go. There's 5 games to go, and they're playing the Patriots twice, the Jets once. The Rams have a decent defense, but I think the Bills could probably score on them. It has been amazing to watch, Adam. It really has.
Yeah, I mean, and then you put Josh Allen at the middle of it, like you said. And we had Tony Dungy on our pregame show, and obviously Allen was discussed.
I saw that.
And he agreed. I mean, this is the absolute best version of Josh Allen, and it's not even about the statistics. Well, maybe it is when it comes to the turnovers or lack thereof, right? Yeah. Which had been kind of the big thing with him that he needed to overcome. But I think that, first of all, it's a credit to Josh and his maturity and his talent and all those things, right? But it happens within the context of what we just talked about. I think that's an important point. He doesn't have to do the all the extra stuff and carry everything. He carries them on his shoulders at times, right? But not to the degree that he tried to or had to in the past. And that, I think that speaks to kind of the complete nature of this roster that we had outlined. So you have Allen not having to have the extreme statistical games, right, to overcome some deficiency in some other area of the football team. And that, to me, is the best representation, or as good a representation as any, of why this team now is so dangerous as it heads down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, he is. We've mentioned this word, right? I think you actually authored it first. Refined. This is the most refined version of Josh Allen that we've ever seen. And it is a thing of beauty to behold, to watch him play the way he's playing right now. Adam, the drive last night that to me epitomized what this team is all about. It was 14-3. They get the ball back at their own 3-yard line, right? Late in the second quarter there, I think it was 3.5 minutes to go. Now, in those conditions, I'm thinking to myself, just play clean here. Don't turn it over. Don't give them any sense of momentum or anything. Just get a few first downs, punt it deep, and then play defense and get out of the half up 14-3. What do? They go 97 yards for the touchdown that pretty much put the game away. I mean, the second half was mostly irrelevant after they went up 21-3. I mean, he's back there. I think it was second and long, and he throws that 39-yard pass to Dawson Knox. The freaking snow is coming down. We can hardly even see the field from the press box. It was coming down so hard. And he's out there making plays like that. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You know, and then they just kept going. They're moving it down. Then Cook gets into it with a couple long runs. And before you know it, they're in the end zone. And even the end zone, the touchdown throw, I think that was the one to Matt Collins, right? In the right corner. I mean, that was the 3rd and goal from like the whatever it was, 7 or 8. And I'm thinking, holy smoke, what a play that was. That was a great throw in the conditions. And now they're up 21-3. And I just, after, we're in the halftime and I start writing and I'm like, wow, that was really, really an amazing drive. I asked him about it afterward. And, typical Josh, he was like poo-pooing it. And I said, no, expound on what you guys did there, because I told him, I'm thinking just get out of there clean and don't turn the ball over. And he says to me, oh, expound, good word. And then he did expound a little bit, but he just said everybody did what they were supposed to do. And that's been the mantra all year. The Bills just seem to be doing man-to-man down the roster what they need to do, what they're supposed to be doing. And that's why this team is 10-0 with a point differential of 131? It's unbelievable. I just did this stat, Adam. They won 35-10 last night. That perfectly offsets the 35-10 loss to the Ravens, right? So in the other 10 games, that's where that plus 131 comes from. They're winning games by an average of 13 points a game. You don't do that in the NFL ever. That is something that just doesn't happen. The Lions, I shouldn't say that. The Lions are doing that because their plus is 180 at this point. But they also had a couple games against, they scored 50-some points a couple times or whatever. The Bills have just been an incredibly impressive team. That's all there is to it.
They really haven't. And Allen, an impressive quarterback, and that gets into, we can talk about the lateral with Amari Cooper and all of that. But you talk about,
who thinks of doing that, right? Who thinks in those conditions that he throws the ball? Now, what was funny about that play too, Adam, and I'm surprised the 49ers didn't bitch about it. Cooper's progress was stopped. And they had literally three guys kind of with a hand on him. I can't believe the whistle didn't blow. But here's Allen. Like, who the hell thinks to go over there with three 49ers tackling your guy and run over there and say, here, pitch it to me? I mean, quarterbacks in the NFL, maybe Lamar Jackson would think of doing that, but he didn't. I haven't seen him do that. Josh Allen did it. In the snow, by the way, where you could barely stand up. And then he makes the dive to the pylon, and somebody got the picture of it, and it's going to be one of the pictures of the year because he's flat out Superman parallel to the ground. I mean, Adam, we've talked about this. He is so fun to watch. And after all the bullshit we watched for 17 years with this team, to watch this guy play, it's just a joy. It is sheer joy to watch him play football.
So he whether it's the 4th and 2 against Kansas City, and we talked to Dungy about this as well. Whether it's the 4th and 2 against Kansas City or like that play, the lateral play last night, right? You still see kind of the Wyoming Josh at times, but it's bottled up the right way, right, in the right doses when the team really needs it most, and it doesn't put at risk what they're trying to get accomplished. It's just the right measure of it. And when we say refined, I think that's a big part of the reason we use that word in the description. And consider the stats. Last night he came in terms of total touchdowns, franchise history we're talking about, 244, tied with Jim Kelly. Now, the lateral is a statistical anomaly because, it's a passing and receiving situation. So he's credited with 4 last night.
Which is stupid, but
it's stupid. But he goes to 2 for the fantasy owners are like, what's going on? So he winds up with 248. Okay, but I guess the point is this, and I was seated next to Vic Carucci and Mike Catalana from WGRZ in Rochester in the press box, and we start talking about this as he breaks that record, the franchise record, and then Cat looked up a couple of things. So you may know this, but guess how many? That's total touchdowns, rushing and passing. 244 for Kelly and now 248 for Allen. Guess how many Jim Kelly had in his career? Rushing touchdowns, regular season rushing touchdowns.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was probably, 10? I mean, he was not a
You're
runner.
close.
I don't know.
You're close. 7.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, Josh is a different athlete.
Josh, right. It's just fun to illustrate that point. At this point in his career, as compared to Kelly's whole career, Josh is, I don't have my note in front of me on that. I believe it's now 57 rushing touchdowns. So you see, I mean, it's a credit to Kelly and that offense for what they were able to do through the air. At the same time, it's the credit to the versatility and Allen's mobility and just how dangerous he is and how much strain he puts on a defense.
Yeah, I mean, trying to play against that guy has got to be a nightmare for defenses. We talk about it all the time on third down. Yeah, again, Lamar Jackson is that kind of player. You are never comfortable on third down because what he can do if a play breaks down, more times than not, he's going to find a way to get a first down. Well, that's Josh Allen. That's exactly what Josh Allen does. I mean, you think about, for instance, the Dolphins, who see him twice a year and have never been they've won one game against him in 14 now or whatever it is. How many times has he driven a dagger through their hearts because he can just find a way to make a first down repeatedly, whether it's throwing or running? But he does that to all teams. He did it last night to the 49ers. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I can't imagine being a defensive coordinator and you've got everything covered, right? You've got them in a bad situation down in distance. You cover the receivers on the play, and then Allen just breaks everything down and crushes your soul. And he does it how many times a game? I mean, there are games where he'll do it 7 or 8 times to a team. Last night, not quite as many because, it was a different type of, game and the conditions, but it's just impossible. We see that once in a while with opposing quarterbacks, and the Bills fans have to live with what it's like when Josh Allen does that to your team. But really, Josh Allen does it more than anybody else to other teams. And it's a nice weapon to have in their arsenal.
Speaking of weapons in the arsenal, you had mentioned off at the top as they look toward the final 5 games of the year now, and the possibility of getting tight end Dalton Kincaid back and receiver Keon Coleman as well. They get Matt Milano back last night, and he winds up playing. And McDermott talked about this after the game, and we thought he might be on some kind of a pitch count or whatever and really kind of ease him back in, given the fact he's had to rehab both the leg injury that he suffered in London early last season and then the torn bicep that he suffered early prior to this season. I mean, in terms of being in game shape and integrating back in, he winds up playing. What did you say that you looked at the snap counts this morning? 70-something?
Yeah. He played 77% of the snaps, and really the bulk of the ones he didn't play came in the fourth quarter when the Bills emptied the bench. It was funny. It's another indication of how, how coaches, just aren't going to tell you the truth. I asked McDermott Wednesday point blank if Milano is activated, because at that point he wasn't activated. I said, do you figure that you'll ramp him up and, basically put him on a pitch count to get him into game shape? And he said, yeah, that's what we would do with most players. Well, of course, here's Milano running out of the tunnel before the game, introduced as a starter. And then, even then, Adam, I'm thinking, well, they gave him the glory of getting that big cheer from the crowd because he's back. And then I figured he'd play the first snap, and then Dorian Williams would come in, and they would use Milano, on that pitch count, maybe on third down, have him in coverage, maybe send him on a few blitzes, to get him going. Nope, he played as far as I could tell, he played every snap unless they went to dime defense, which they did do a couple times early in the game. Cam Lewis came in as the 6 DB, and Bernard stayed on the field. Milano went off. But he played, if it had been a close game, he would have played close to 100% of the snaps. So that was really a bit of a surprise. It was also a nice surprise because I didn't think that I didn't think he'd be able to do that in his first game. I thought it would take a little bit of lead time, but he was in there. Now it'll be fun to watch him next week, Adam, when, they are playing on an ice skating rink, when he can actually be an athlete, which is his greatest attribute, is being an athlete. Now they'll be able to do it in Los Angeles. So I think we'll get a better indication of where he is in that game as opposed to last night.
Yeah, I mean, that's a situation where, the Bills can win anywhere. We have seen that. And certainly the conditions last night wound up playing to their advantage. We talked about if there was an edge, that it's a subtle one when it's snowy like that with footing. And that, by the way, that wasn't forecast, as you know. The feeling was that that lake effect band was going to move to the south, right? And it just hovered right there on the brink, right over Orchard Park, and it snowed consistently from the pregame warm-ups right through the end of the game and into the early morning hours as we still finished our postgame coverage. And so credit to the Bills.
I joked before the game, Adam. I said NBC ordered that snow. The national anthem was being sung, okay? They're just going on live, and it was almost like they ordered it for the visuals, right? And then it lasted all night long. Crazy. Yeah. Did Dungy say that? Did you talk to him about that one?
He wanted snow. Did he admit that? He actually brought it up. He goes, we interviewed him in the regular training center. We couldn't get access to the field before the game, so we interviewed him in the regular media room that we all work out of during the week. They brought him over there, and he, at the very end of the interview, was like, let's get out there and get him in some snow. So, for dramatic effect, it's not much. And we talked about the fact that's actually a point, right? The players don't prefer it. Josh Allen has told you and would tell others it's not his preference to play in those conditions. But again, the Bills have had experience in it, and I think they made the most of it under the conditions. Certainly better whether it was preparation, execution, all of it that we saw, than San Francisco did. At times, it felt like San Francisco wanted them to fire up the engines on the jet and point that thing west and head back to Northern California when the driving lake effect snow is falling.
But it didn't start that way. I mean, the way the game started, right? They get a 3-and-out on defense. San Francisco did, and then their first possession with McCaffrey in there, they looked like they were going to be in the fight because you knew they wanted to run the ball, and McCaffrey's a huge part of that. He was gashing the Bills on several plays, plus their short passing game. He is the key. Him and Kittle are the keys to their short passing game. It wasn't so much the guys on the outside that the Bills needed to be concerned with. And I thought, man, this is going to be a tough night if they keep getting the ball either running or throwing to McCaffrey. And it looked for a while like the 49ers, a team that we talked about, desperate, backs against the wall. They've got to win. They looked like they were ready, even with the snow. And then as soon as he got hurt, Adam, all the air just got sucked right out of them, and they couldn't do anything. I thought one of the biggest things in the game, especially after McCaffrey went out, is that, again, the snow's coming down. You've got to rely on your short passing game. The Bills took Kittle completely out of it. He caught one pass all night. That's one of the best tight ends in the NFL. In fact, I think he came into the league or into the game maybe number 2 in tight end yardage this season behind, well, I'm not even sure. I'm not going to say. It was either 1 or 2. That guy's been humongous for them all year. He was invisible. So that was really, really impressive in the snow to be able to do that.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, if there's one area of concern I've got, it's the run defense. And Shanahan, the plan was to run the ball on them to the extent, almost to a fault, to exploit that, shortcoming on the Buffalo defense. And they were doing it. I mean, McCaffrey looked on, and then unfortunately he suffers what appears to be a season-ending, based on the reports and what Shanahan said after the game, a season-ending PCL injury. And you hate to see that, especially given everything that guy has been through. But it changed. They've been ravaged by injuries in one form or another, really, for the balance of their season. And to have that happen once again.
They played that game without Nick Bosa, who's one of the best edge rushers in football. They like we talked about, their nickel corner is one of the best in the game. Lenore, he didn't play. They lost Fred Warner. Fred Warner was out for a few series, was an outstanding all-pro linebacker. He was cramping up. They didn't have him in fact, he wasn't on the field when Cook scored his long touchdown. They were severely banged up. Purdy played. I don't know how much he was affected by the shoulder injury. Again, it was kind of tough to tell with all the snow. It's kind of hard to make judgments on players. But yeah, they were incredibly banged up. That is not the same 49ers team that went to the Super Bowl last year. They are a depleted, wounded team. And again, the conditions certainly did not help them. But look, hey, the Bills took care of business, Adam. Right. I mean, they knew they had a wounded team in front of them, and they hammered them. They hammered them the way you need to hammer a team, especially with a division title right there to be taken care of.
And so they locked down a 5th straight division title, and obviously their goals are far greater than that. Now this is a team that needs to get over the hump in the postseason and get to the Super Bowl. And
that's unfortunate too, Adam, that there's so much put on winning the Super Bowl. I know it's everyone's dream in Buffalo to do it. But again, if they don't make it, or if they do make it and lose the Super Bowl, you know what the narrative is going to be, that Sean McDermott can't get the Bills over the hump. And I hate that mindset. We've talked about this, how we had 17 years of absolute nothingness. And Bills fans, I get you want the Super Bowl, but enjoy what's happening here. I mean, there's got to be some joy taken from what this team has accomplished. And I know they've fallen short in the playoffs, and it's frustrating. But wouldn't you take that over what we've had, or what we had for all that time?
There's no question.
There's no question. So I just don't want the narrative to be, if they don't get there or they lose the Super Bowl, that it was a failed season, because it's not a failed season. I mean, McDermott put up his hand last night, right? In the locker room. 5, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. NFL teams rarely do that, win 5 straight division titles. That is an accomplishment to be proud of. And I just wish that Bills fans would maybe understand that and not put so much emphasis on the Super Bowl, because this has been a fun time in Bills history.
There's no question about it. And consider the fact that this was supposed to be a transition year. I mean, there's every reason to think they'll have more cap room and can add a key piece and maybe draft like an A1 receiver type player or whatever. And we got a long time to discuss those options. But the point is, they moved on from Stephon Diggs. They took steps to kind of get right with the cap that every team that's paying a franchise quarterback has to do at one time or another. And that's what's made this all the more welcome and all the more impressive, is they do it in a year that they're transitioning the roster and getting young and moving on from players like Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde on the back end and Stephon Diggs, right? And all of those things. And so now you get a fifth straight division title. It may be the best version of a McDermott coach team. Look, I think he should be in the discussion for Coach of the Year. I really do. I do think he's had some issues and some in-game decisions in the postseason. 13 seconds still looms, and I hate to bring up that history, but those are prominent in the questions that need to be answered once this team gets to the postseason. I agree that those are issues for Bills fans and for Sean McDermott and everything else. Now, there's every indication they can do that. But having pointed that out, that does nothing to offset the consistency, the culture, all of those things that they're able to sustain this, that they hit on Josh Allen, have built the culture and been able to sustain this for the length of time that they have been able to. It's incredibly impressive. And so now it becomes about the 1 seed. And the Bills, as you mentioned, on the road against the Rams and then on the road against Detroit. And that one's going to be that'll be all hyped as the potential Super Bowl preview. And we can read into that game what we will. I think it's a good measuring stick and indicator and all of those things, right? At Ford Field, on an ice rink, as you said, just like SoFi, right? So athletes can be athletes. I think and the Lions may be the best team in football. So I think that's terrific for the Bills to have on their schedule at that point. And then you've got 2 matchups with the Patriots and the Jets sandwiched in between, right? And they're a game behind the Kansas City Chiefs, who somehow remain the number 1 seed. I mean, you talk about a ship that's got holes in the hull and taking on water. They certainly look like a team that's doing that. And oh, by the way, they're scheduled down the stretch now. Chargers at home, at Cleveland, Houston at home, at Pittsburgh, and at Denver to close it out. So my point is this. Given the way things are trending, there's every reason to believe that 1 seed is still in reach.
Oh, absolutely. The Broncos, the Chiefs definitely have the harder schedule. No question about it. So the Bills, it's right there for their taking. And it was disgusting to watch the game the other day, the Black Friday game. Just unbelievable. Unfriggin' believable how the Chiefs escape every single time. How stupid that was that the Raiders blew that opportunity. It just makes you sick. I wanted to throw up watching that game. Because as you know, Adam, it is all about me. And I want that 1 seed so I can stay home in January. I don't want to be traveling around the country in January. I want the Bills to be at home. So, yeah, I was aggravated. But there's been so many games like that all season for the Chiefs. They have escaped by the skin of their teeth time and time again. Mm-hmm. And I just don't see that team as a legitimate number 1 seed. They may end up getting it, but I don't think they're going to be deserving of it. And I think the Bills are really the best team in the AFC. Now, we'll see what happens. The Bills have 3 division games. They're against shitty teams, no doubt. But you know how division games are. They can always be a little bit tricky. Stupid things can happen. The Bills have got to stay focused. I talked to a few guys last night about how do you do that? How do you stay straight, focused, understand that the job is not done yet? And they said, we're going to do what we've been doing all year. It's 1 week at a time. It's a cliche. That's how we do things around here. And if the Bills can do that and maintain this same level of play, I think by the end of the year, they are going to have a great chance to be sitting at the top of the conference. And that would be humongous for their chances to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, to get that bye and to be at home. All right. Thank you very much, Sal Maiorana.
Thank you for not doing this last night at 2:30 in the morning. I'm glad we got to sleep a little bit and, put our pretty faces back on here in the morning. That was good. Good choice.
You were up. I looked up. I could see you, hammering away on your computer up there in the press box while Carucci and I are down on the tundra.
Yep.
It must so just at least, I was back
Must
into
have
the
sucked
fray
to be
with
you. Must have
guys.
sucked to be you. I'll tell you that.
It was
I was outside. I was outside last night, walking to the locker room for about 2 minutes, and I'm like, "Oh my god, how did these people sit out here for 4 hours? It's crazy."
Yeah, credit to the fans and everyone. The sideline staffs, the players, the journalists, the photojournalists who do work down there in those conditions all game long. It was fun and at the same time not fun with those under those. It was kind of that damp cold that no matter what you had on was kind of going to cut right through it. So again, credit to the Bills for overcoming that at home. And 35-10, the final over San Francisco. So Sal Maiorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. I'm Adam Benigni, WGRZ TV. Sports Talk Live comes your way on Monday night tonight as we record this 7 o'clock with Vic Carucci and Paul Hamilton. And I wanted to take this moment to say congratulations to John Scott and his wife, Heather Pruzak. Yes. Logan Daniel Scott was born just prior to the holiday, I think. And so he is, I talked to him last night on the way down. Vic and I gave him a call. And he sounded, Sal, exhausted in the best way possible. Yes, everyone was sleeping.
And he was also very upset that his Ohio State Buckeyes shit the bed against Michigan. I saw that he posted a picture. He's already got the baby in an Ohio State gear. But it was a rough day on Saturday with the newborn baby and Ohio State doing what they did. So that kind of tempered probably the excitement a bit for John and Heather. Well, not Heather, but John. But yes, congratulations for them. We miss seeing Heather around in the press box and in the press. So good for her, and best of luck. You and I've got 3 of them. It's the greatest thing in the world to have the children, and mine are all grown and on their way. But I'll never forget the times you have with the babies. It's awesome.
Yeah, just terrific. So congratulations to Heather and John once again. And we will be back on Wednesday as the Bills begin preparations in earnest for the trip to the West Coast and the matchup with the Los Angeles Rams as they try and continue this incredible run that has them at 10-2 and division champions in the AFC East for the 5th straight year. So for Sal Maiorana, I am Adam Benigni. Thank you for being with us here on Believe in Bills.